perfection and imperfection are the same thing. I mean, by showing that you strive for perfection, you should show you challenged imperfection on the road, isn't it? They use imperfection by showing their authentic self. So imperfection is maybe much more of a way to show something deeper behind it.
Herzlich willkommen zu Brand Trust Talks Beyond, der tiefgründigste Blick hinter die Kulissen von Marken und deren Machern.
Hi guys, thank you for tuning in to Brand Trust Talks, and I have Kees Elands with me, and he's maybe the reason why you are tuning into this episode. And together with Kees from TrendsActive, he's the founder and the trend consultant, and with Kees together I discussed the trend of imperfection, and I asked Kees what does he think about this trend, what is the reason maybe for the imperfection that we observe at the moment with many brands all over the world. And yeah, Kees is a very good expert about that, to talk with him and to think about what does imperfection mean and what does it mean maybe also for the future. So have fun, enjoy this first episode, and thank you for tuning in again. So Kees, the second part of our talk in this Friday afternoon is about a second observation that I made, and also something, it's really like my favorite idea at the moment, what I like to talk about, and it's the topic of imperfection. And I know that I also learned it from you, this imperfection trend that maybe we have at the moment. But the interesting part about this is, I think we have it on different levels. We have it on personal level. So, and this is maybe also the second part of the Be Real discussion, that people also like to show a little bit their truth and also their imperfection. We learned it also from the brands in the last years, that brands had also the tendency to show that they are not perfect, but they have a big vision and they try to reach it, but it's not always the case that they are already there. And I think this changed a little bit also in the branding industry or with the companies, that they also realize, we need a big vision, but we don't need to be there already. And this is, from my point of view, a definite change in comparison to the time we had beforehand. And now to my question, what do you think about this imperfection observation again? And also my question, is it right that I do, or that I have this fact or this observation, or do you think I see something else?
No, great observation, Colin. I think you're right, and it's definitely manifested already. So it's not about right. I think it's just the case. That's what it is, and this is like one-on-one related to what we discussed before. It's a new generation that's actually looking for more authenticity. They're looking for, not per se for, I wouldn't say for imperfection, Colin, but that's why I call it authenticity. Mm-hmm. I think they use imperfection by showing their authentic self. So imperfection is maybe much more of a way to show something deeper behind it. Than that. Imperfection itself is maybe not the trend. But more the manifestation of the trend of authenticity. I think partially the reason why brands are actually doing this has to do with trust. There are more reasons. So I think what we just discussed before, it's a new generation actually asking for more authenticity. Well, brands were in the past, as you observed, as you said, they were more faceless, so to speak. Sort of, we're perfect and we create this perfect world, and let's create distance between us and consumers. And now you see much more that this gap is quite big. There are quite some trust issues, and that has to do with the facelessness of brands. So how do you then come closer to consumers? Is by showing you're a human as a brand as well. And how do you show that? By showing you're not perfect as well. So especially with scandals, you saw this happening, I think, around 7, 8, 9 years ago. You saw the first brands starting communicating about, hey, sorry, we fucked up, doing advertising, saying, oh, sorry. They called that in those years, I think, brutal honesty. So they started to talk about, we have to say, oh, we're sorry, we messed up. Yeah, so I think this has grown, definitely. So I think trust is a big part of it, yeah.
Yeah, very good and interesting answer from you to connect it also with the big societal trends that you have there. But here I see some practical issues, I would say, because if I go back to consultancy now and going to my clients and saying, okay, here we have this observation, authenticity, being more human because it's creating even more trust, then of course they will hear me and see that point. But I think they have some barriers somewhere in mind, because on one hand, in Europe or even maybe in Germany, I don't know how it is in Netherlands, to be honest, we always learned and lived up the promise everything has to be perfect. So 100%, no mistakes at all. I mean, this brought us somewhere to the point where we are at the moment. So perfect quality in everything what you are producing, and no mistake at all. And I think this is really something like a cultural heritage of Germany, or maybe Dachregion, I don't know, that everything needs to be perfect. So the first question is, how does it go in line? So on one hand, somehow our idea or both idea of maybe showing authenticity and even the vulnerable way somewhere. And on the other hand, people, generations who in their formative year, I would call it now, learn from you, they were raised up with this trend to be always on the perfect state.
Yeah, I understand your question. But the question, if there's a, how do you say, discrepancy between it? Because I mean, by showing that you strive for perfection, you should show you challenged imperfection on the road, isn't it? I mean, the whole reason to become successful is by failure. That's the only way you learn. So I think it's also about how you show you became perfect, or you are. I think everybody is looking for a sort of perfection, but it's more about, again, I think it's more about the things behind it, and the things behind it are more about, okay, but how do you come to this picture in the end? And that's hard work, and that's sweat, and that's the sacrifices, and that's innovation, and that's wrong choices. And I think that's the story people also would like to hear, because otherwise it sounds like a sort of non-realistic fairy tale. And I think a lot of people are fed up with that as well, because the world is not perfect as it is. And I think a lot of people, especially in these complex times, where a lot of people, we have war, we have a lot of people that don't believe in God anymore. Yeah, everybody is looking for, how do you say it? Balancing what is life about, etc. We need to have another look on what perfection may look like. I think that's what's going on currently. Something like this. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting, because what you're saying is actually, if you want to underline your high level of quality that you are offering, then it will be even more trustworthy if you show that there was a way to come up there, or to arrive at this point of quality level. So yeah, I
think Nike is for example, maybe it just pops in my head now, but Nike is really also showing failure.
Yeah,
they communicate as a brand. They communicate about failure. That failure is part of life, and actually failure is part of winning as well in the end. So for me, those things are not separate. I think they're actually one. Perfection and imperfection are the same thing. And yeah, maybe to look for, let's say, a more broader definition of perfection, that's the right thing to do in Europe. Yeah.
Do you think it's important to somehow use this observation or use this trend, or think about what it means maybe for my marketing, for my branding, when you think about the generations that are looked for at the moment, like the Gen Y, but of course also the Gen Z, or maybe even the Gen Alpha, I don't know. Do you think it's maybe even more important to show this imperfection somehow, or the reality or the authenticity, because it will be even more attractive for the generations which are very attractive at the moment?
Definitely. I'm convinced it's important to look at a sort of broader definition of perfection, which is more about authenticity. And I think that's where younger generation are looking at. That's also what we see in research. When it comes to employability, for example, we see, compared to other generations, that they're much more interested in working at companies that share the same value, etc. And those are things that are much more about the core of an organization. That's much more about the brand, so to speak, what values, what's the culture. And I think that's very closely related to this topic. Yeah, I think you're right that those things are connected. Yeah,
perfect. So Kees, then thank you very much also for our second part and for our first pilot maybe of this chat on a Friday afternoon. Let's see if we will find more topics in the future and if we will do this again. So again, thank you very much for your answers and your interesting perspective.
Yeah, thank you as well, Colin. And I hope it was a bit imperfect. I think it was a bit imperfect, and hopefully, therefore, it will be valued as authentic.
I guess so. So thanks so much. Have a good day.